You go through a lot of grief, realizing your life has changed.
Yeah, I was trusting. I was all in. I did everything that they asked.
CICP, which is the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program. That program is really a disaster. It has a 98% denial rate.
I hope this film is a calling card of the past and a warning for the future.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the post safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Hardy, president of Texans for Vaccine Choice. Welcome to another episode of TFVC Shot Callers. Today, it is my honor to introduce some of the people that made the upcoming documentary Follow the Silence possible. I'm here with Matthew Guthrie and Tyler Lindsay, who were filmmakers on the movie, as well as Brianne Dresden and Joel Walskog, who are the co-founders of React 19, and they share their stories of injury result from the COVID vaccine trials in the movie. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to TFVC Shot Callers, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I'm going to just thank you. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in. I've got a lot of burning questions, and I am going to start with you, Matthew. And I would like to know a little bit about what inspired you to take on such a controversial topic and high stakes content.
Well, for me, it was really obvious very early on in the pandemic and with the rollout of the vaccines that something was wrong. It was very clear to me that there was evidence of harm that was being covered up, and it was pretty easy to, I think, read through those lines. I had a dear friend of mine, Chase Anderson, that was at the Highwire at the time, and he invited me to come up to the studio one day, and that just happened to be the first time that the first three nurses, Angelia DeSalle being one of them, that came forward to tell their story about being injured after receiving the vaccine. Not long after that, I saw the press conference that Bree was in Milwaukee in June of 2021. And I just, to be honest with you, it just felt like this was something that God had put on my heart deeply to get involved in this story, because it seemed so obvious that we were full speed ahead into a disaster. I had just watched this great filmmaker I love, Alex Gibney's amazing documentary filmmaker. He had just released the Crime of the Century documentary about the opioid crisis, and the level of corruption and cover-up that went into that story, I had just massively sort of digested as a storyteller. So when I saw all this stuff happening with the vaccines, I started realizing all of the similarities between that and the opioid crisis, right? It was the same thing. We were just going full steam ahead into this new problem without the context of everything that we just lived through. So, we made this film, and I got involved with this story also because I saw that journalism was failing the American people deeply. And it was very obvious for everybody paying attention early on that story was being covered up. And I just didn't know until I met Bree and Joel and everybody that became part of the film just how deep that cover up went. And that's something that the film really gets. It really is a discovery process, and I think it's going to wake a lot of people in the country up. What degree of censorship went on, and that's why we call this film, the logline of the movie is the hidden story of the human cost of censorship. To try to keep things a little bit more buttoned up, here you go.
Wonderful. Well, can you shared a story, just to fill in our listeners, we were able to go to the Santa Monica Film Festival where this movie was screened a couple of months ago, and it was just a beautiful moment. But there was a panel discussion after the screening, and you told a story, and I couldn't quite hear the whole of it. So if you'll tell just like the abbreviated version of, at the time you were on location in some remote area,
Yes.
Can you tell
Yes.
that story? Because it was just, from what
Certainly.
I heard, I was like, I want to hear that again.
I'm happy to. So, I was working on a TV series that was shooting in Costa Rica with a dear friend of mine. He's one of the greatest wildlife cinematographers that's really alive today. His name is Alex Jones. He's an incredible filmmaker. And I was lucky to go out there and film with him. We were chasing army ants around Costa Rica for about 7-8 weeks. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of that, it was strange. For me, I was looking at this as an opportunity as a filmmaker to get involved in a new genre of content that I wasn't familiar with, right? Doing the nature stuff was interesting, and I'd had experience with some outdoor content in the past, but doing that kind of level of production for nature films was new to me. So I was looking at this as, is this something that I want to get involved in as future work? And I kept having this deep spiritual experience while I was in the jungle. Like God was telling me, you are good at people. People is your focus, not bugs. and when you're working with guys like that are passionate about bugs, it's incredible what they know. Like they'll see a bug on a tree, and I mean, it's like the greatest thing that they've ever seen. And I just didn't have that same passion. I love people. I'm passionate about people. So there was this kind of experience that I was happening, and this movie, what was happening with the vaccines and realizing that there was harm, I was already invested in this, and I felt like when I get off of this job and I go back to the US, I think this is something I want to follow. Well, I had an experience. About 5 o'clock in the morning, randomly one morning, I got woken up. And I've always had this really close relationship with Jesus Christ. And Yeshua has always been a huge part of my life since I was a little child. He's just, I knew Jesus before I knew Jesus in this life, if that makes sense. So I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and it was Yeshua. And I knew it was Yeshua because it's a very profound energy when it's him, right? It's an undeniable realization. And he said, get up and go to the bridge. We got to talk. Well, there's this bridge that connected where we stayed to the research facility that we worked in. So it was a beautiful little spot. We'd have our coffee there in the morning and stuff. So I get up and I go out there, and then he starts putting this on me. And it was like, he gave me this experience of putting this yoke, like this heavy burden on my shoulders. And I felt it. Like I felt the volunteer of, yes, I will take this. And he gave me this deep download of, I built you to do this. And I've had a personal experience with loss in my life. And I lost my sister because of medical malpractice when I was a child. So I have a real deep understanding of that. It's one of the reasons why I also got involved, because when I saw Bree and Stephanie and everybody crying at that, Wisconsin press conference, I recognized that trauma in those people. I knew that intimately, and I knew that they were telling the truth because I could resonate with it. So I felt Jesus tell me, I need you to do this. And I knew that this was like a mission that I accepted. And then later that day or the next day, I got a call from Chase, and my buddy that worked at the High Wire. And I was on a jungle tower, and my phone hadn't rung in like 7 weeks. So it was really bizarre that my phone rang in the first place. So I'm like 300 feet up in the air, and I get a call, and it's Chase saying, hey, Mickey Willis wants to talk to you. And I was like, I don't know that name. Where do I know that name from? And basically, with that long story short, I wanted to make this film. I was going to go back to Dell and pitch him the idea of developing this story and go around the country documenting these diverse stories. And before I could do it, Mickey basically called me and asked me if I would make the very movie that I was going to Dell to pitch. So it's just very obvious that there was an intense level of divinity in this project. And we all have approached this with a deep and profound love that is like the love that Yeshua has shown us, and the love that Yeshua wants us to show others, right? And that's been a huge motivation for this movie, was to do this story in a way that would not demonize people, that would open people up to this conversation with love and with empathy. And honestly, those are the people which you'll hear from Bree and Joel. Like this is their heart. And everybody in this movement and everybody that's a part of this film, they share this too. And it's why we're all here today. And I mean, that's why the advocacy work that they do is so incredible, because it's coming from that same impact, that same place of passion and compassion and love.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a part of this story that is I feel like it's really important. So thank you for sharing that. Tyler, I'm going to pivot to you. You were more of a editor and producer on this, and really helped the piece all of these stories in a way that truly reflects y'all's heart for humanity. And, just this is such a heavy topic, right? But you come out of this movie having hope, and that is a difficult needle to thread. And I give y'all a lot of credit for that. But so this next question is directed at you. And that is, how do you balance this emotional storytelling with, the factual accuracy of the corruption?
Yeah, I mean, that's really a great question. So Matt comes back from the jungle with his botfly friend.
Yeah. Well, I left that part out. I had to get botflies.
And he comes back and he says, "Hey man, I get this call." And he tells me the story and he says, "I want you involved." And I said, "Okay, Mickey Willis, that sounds familiar." I said, "Is that the guy that did the Judy Mikovits piece?" And he said, "Yes, great, I'm in," because that was a huge deal for us, for my whole family. And what he didn't tell me is this will break you down. He didn't tell me the part about what I was getting into would give me the experience of the trauma that these people were having. He had already started actually filming some of this, so he knew what he was getting into. He left that part out for me. So as I get deeper and deeper and deeper into the project, it was hard.
That was New Year's, wasn't it? Wasn't that when you finally went through the media? Yeah.
And it was tough. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never been part of anything like it. It was, I mean, and you asked me how you balance that. I couldn't balance it. I mean, honestly, I got so deeply invested. Brian Dresden, Bree's husband, to this day, having watched his interview for the first time, it just gave me so much sadness. And even talking about it, because I remember it so much, I had to basically let go of control, which I love control. But in this, I just knew I have to do everything by feeling. That was the only way to get through this. There was no measure of control. There was no scripting something. You had to go through all the pain and all the trauma these people went through to truly understand it, and you had to bring it home a little bit. You tried to shake it, but there was no real way to do it. And my family would attest. It was a really hard 3 years for me. Yeah. It's also beautiful because at the same time, we knew at the other side of this, there was something special to come. And, nothing with great reward doesn't come with a deep hardship. Mm-hmm. And it was, I didn't know what I was getting into, but man, I'll never regret it, because at the Santa Monica Film Festival, that feeling of relief, that feeling that, so Denise Hertz, who's in the film, she came up to Matt and she had this huge smile on her face. And she told him what it truly meant to have seen this in the light that it was projected in. And I got some of that too, but hers was really special because she had such a big smile, and that smile had been missing from her for so long.
She got the support and the love from her family that she didn't have all of that time.
And if you can do that for one person, let alone many, I don't know. Perfect. It's funny. You're choking me up with this question. I don't mean to belabor it, but it is. I just had to let go and have faith, have trust, be committed, and ride the wave the best I could, and know that the outcome would be something special.
Yeah. And to finish that point too, we designed this specifically because we wanted them to have that experience, right? With a movie like this, the goal is you'll never put somebody in their shoes. You can't possibly understand what this is like, and only they understand what it is like because they lived through it, right? But what we had to do was find a way to make a film that felt like a real movie, that gave you, as close as we could, to give you the experience of going through the story from their perspective, right? From the perspective of the injured. Because if you can unpack the last 4 years from their lens, everything starts to make sense.
Oh, you know what? Real quick, I'm sorry to jump in with this. Here's one thing that was really awesome, and I know we don't have a ton of time. So Matt has this giant whiteboard. It's huge, massive, right? And he says, what we have to do is we have to do this all through threads. There's these pieces that will all tag into each other. And this means this, means this, means this. And that's an entire thread. But then we have to weave it through and get to the other side. He projected how we were going to achieve this film in a really beautiful way. And Rebecca, please, if you have the photo of us with the whiteboard and the threads, it's quite something to behold. It's really, really clever. And Matt did a beautiful job. And him and I really worked really hard and with a lot of effort and care to make sure that every thread paid off at the end. Yeah. And I feel like that was the huge achievement of this film as far as filmmaking goes.
It is a masterpiece. I will tell you, I've watched a whole lot of, medical corruption documentaries, and this is truly the most beautiful. And you guys' your heart, I want to say y'all's, but not everybody on this movie is from Texas. But y'all's heart for humanity really does shine bright. And it's, like I said, it was just almost like an impossible goal. And yet y'all were able to just beautifully weave it. So your threads are a beautiful tapestry.
And
let me go ahead.
And one last thing, we also had an executive producer that said, "Guys, make something beautiful."
Yeah,
we had somebody that just said, "Make something extraordinary and go." Yeah. And Mickey Willis,
we wouldn't be here without him.
Man, right. I've never met somebody like him ever.
Yeah. Same.
You can not deny just his creative genius and his heart for humanity as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Let me pivot right quick and get some takes from Brianne and Joel. Here's my first question. This is directed at both of y'all, so y'all can arm wrestle for who goes first. But just generally, just walk us through what happened to you during the trials and just briefly outline your injuries. Just so people have that context.
Should I start, Joel?
Sure, Bree, you go ahead.
So the clinical trials is where this all began, right? The injuries didn't happen with the public rollout; they happened in the clinical trials, and that's where I jumped in the movie, is because I was a clinical trial participant, and my reaction started within an hour. The drug company couldn't get away from me fast enough as soon as my reaction started. And it was just the very beginning of so many missteps that we really do need to be looking at. And it was scary. I was totally on my own at that point and had not met anybody else. But over time, I met others. And one of my favorites that I've met across this timeline has actually been Dr. Joel Walskog. So, Joel?
Well, thank you, Bree. That was very nice of you. And Matthew and Tyler, I just want to thank you guys so much. And honestly, your hearts just show through. And it's so beautiful how you describe the movie and your involvement. And I certainly know your hearts are truly in the right place. So thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for having us. My story is I was part of that 1A group. The 1A group was the healthcare workers. And I trusted naively the regulatory, the federal health agencies that I had been, part of the whole system for my whole life. I mean, I trained for a long time and decided to get my one Moderna shot on December 30th of 2020. And literally about a week later, I remember waking up, telling my wife my feet were numb. But didn't really know what was going on. I continued to kind of go to work, but things deteriorated. And then one time I was at work sitting in a clinic room, the clinic, talking to a patient, and I was sitting on a chair and I tried to get up and I couldn't get up. So I pushed myself up with my hands, but then quickly fell back. And when I fell, I knew with my legs not working, something more ominous was going on. And very quickly I got a workup and found out that I had an injury in my spinal cord. And since then, I've developed other issues such as autoimmune disorder and autonomic dysfunction. Like many of us, primarily my issues are neurologic. But for me, 2021 was a very trying year. I certainly was, as all of us, you go through a lot of grief, realizing your life has changed. And I could go back to work. But finding Bree and finding others, other injured people has been, certainly a blessing. I've been able to not only help myself, but really help others. And I think, truly in helping others, I'm helping myself, and been very blessed to be able to do what we do, which is serve these people that have been, truly abandoned. So, I feel very blessed.
Right. Let me ask you both. Did you attempt to, or I don't know if that's the right word, but did you file with the vaccine injury compensation program, whether it was the countermeasures or anything? And if you did, what was your experience with that?
Joel?
Well, I did apply. So all your listeners, so traditionally an FDA approved vaccine that's on the vaccine schedule, if you get injured, you apply to the VICP, which is the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. That program, while not perfect, certainly is much better than what we have to apply for. So if you're injured by a countermeasure, again, the COVID vaccine was really not considered a vaccine. It was considered a countermeasure in the public health emergency. You have to apply to the CICP, which is the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program. That program is really a disaster. It has a 98% denial rate. And if you look as of April 1st of this year, it has only compensated 30 Americans. If you take out 2 outliers that got large, at least awards, I don't think they've received it yet, but if you take out 2 outliers, we would call them, there's 28 people that have been compensated for an average of about $4,200 per injury. I did apply to the CICP. It took me 2 years to get a denial. I got denied. I appealed, and it took me about another 18 months to get denied from my appeal. Subsequently, again, the program is horrible. It's a black hole. You don't know why you get denied, except this statement that they tell you that according to available medical science and research and knowledge, transverse myelitis, which was my original diagnosis, is not considered to be directly related to the vaccine. So I did file on Aaron Siri's law group on my behalf, did file a case in federal court in North Texas against Joe Biden, Javier Becerra, HHS, and Carol Johnson from HRSA or HRSA. They did file a lawsuit on my behalf, as well as a couple other injured people for the violation of our constitutional rights, of our 5th and 7th Amendment rights, which have to do with the right to due process and jury trial. That's still pending. There's another similar lawsuit in Louisiana. But the compensation program, Rebecca, as you know, is just absolutely horrible. It leaves these people completely financially, these injuries leave them financially devastated. And again, I understand there's a public health emergency. I mean, you can argue whether or not there should have been one, but there was during the COVID vaccine, but it's crazy. So there's supposed to be a safety net. So if you get injured, okay, and there's this PrEP Act, which prevents you from suing anyone, there should be a safety net. Well, the safety net is the CICP, but the CICP is a dismal failure. Yeah. So it leaves so many of these people just financially abandoned.
It's never not wicked, is it? And I am just so sorry. And I should have introduced you with a little bit more information, Joel, and that is that you are an MD. I mean, that you were, and I just want to ask you, I mean, what was your stance on, and this is for anybody that wants to answer, but Joel, you go first, is what was your stance on public health before COVID was even a word anybody knew?
I wouldn't say I thought much about public health. Again, just so people know, the physicians don't get taught about vaccines. Physicians, I've never heard of VAERS before, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. I've never heard of the CICP. I've never heard of the PrEP Act. We don't get taught that. Again, I would tell you, I didn't know anything. I always say that I was on the hamster wheel of life. Okay. And as a physician, I was an orthopedist or an orthopedic surgeon. I specialize in joint replacement. But just as a physician, we don't know any of this stuff. We're not taught it. And what we're taught is, okay, I remember maybe here is the vaccine schedule. Here is the vaccines that the children have to get. But that's what we're taught. And this for me was very much of an awakening process where I really realized the system that I was part of is just full of lies and corruption and deceit and financial motives. Again, when I first started practice, I kind of tell the story sometimes where when I first started practice, about 70% of orthopedic surgeons were in independent practice or private practice, and about 30% were employed. And to some degree, that is completely flipped now. So the vast majority of physicians, at least I can speak for orthopedic surgeons, are employed. And what does that mean? They answer to usually a non-medical administrator. And it's just following the rules and doing what you're told. And that's why I'm sad now, because I think a lot of physicians are no longer scientists. They're no longer independent thinkers. And it's horrible. I mean, I got the shot. I didn't think about it. And I even had asymptomatic COVID 3 months before. I can sit there and criticize myself, and people criticize me all the time. But the fact of the matter is, it's done and over. I'm not going to sit and cry about, spilled milk. I'm going to try to, fix it. And that's what we're about in React, is how do we take our negative reactions, as we say, and turn it into positive actions? Everyone, if you go on social media, and I get the people that are that have to tell their sad story. I get it. Okay. And sometimes telling your story, I think, is good early on, but at some point here in this whole experience, we need to move on. And how can we make positive change? And that's to some degree what this movie is about, is trying to get other people, I call it the moldable middle, the people that are ready to open their eyes and uncover their ears and really have empathy for us and for their fellow human beings, but also let's start a dialogue. This whole situation post-COVID, or actually in COVID, has been so polarizing for some reason. And everyone needs to put down their swords and just start a healthy dialogue.
Amen, buddy.
Bree, what about you? About what was your just general take on vaccines and public health prior to your experience here? I mean, you were a mom, a preschool teacher. I mean, that's what made you eligible for the trial. I mean,
yeah, I was trusting. I was all in. I did everything that they asked. I did the social distancing. We did the isolation for the period that they wanted it. We did the masking everywhere. I did masking even after my injury for a very, very long time. Still, even to this day, if I'm sitting next to someone in a plane and it's very obvious that they're concerned about other germs, and I'm sitting next to someone that's got a mask on, I'll see if they need some kind of, something to help them feel better about sitting next to somebody else, right? Because the reality is the people that are still wearing masks usually are the people that are the ones that keep getting sick. And I can relate to them a lot because I keep getting sick too. But so I still am in this place where I think there's a lot of these lines that have been drawn that are not based on science. They're not based on any kind of rational conversations or experiences. It's all based on emotion and fear. And I'm hopeful that by breaking down some of these barriers for people on both sides, right? Because this film, and Matt and Tyler intentionally put this together this way, it challenges the thought process for both sides. It's not just one side proving their point and, that this is used as a weapon. This is truly used as a mechanism to break down barriers. And it's because we've all learned through this process. I've learned that I need to be questioning things a lot more. I've learned that I need to be doing a lot more research. But I've also learned the incredible resilience of the human spirit and just how much people can do through hard times, despite corruption, despite evil, despite division, despite fear. We can do a lot to make a difference and to heal ourselves and our communities. So
it's that opportunity, right? It's like when really awful things happen to us historically, those are always the springboards that make us find a new plateau of goodness from something awful. And that's a lesson that we should learn, and we should look back in history and realize there's a pattern there, and to use that in that foresight now with this situation. This is an opportunity for the country to grow together, to become less divided, and to have an entirely new level of accountability with our government. And if we do this right and we do this with love, we can change things generationally, and we should do that now.
Yeah, we wanted to set a tone that we weren't coming from a place of anger, resentment. We really wanted to come from a place of compassion, no matter what your choice was in this scenario.
Because those were compassionate choices.
They were,
right? People that got the vaccine,
Yeah.
they didn't do that out of anything other than I'm trying to help people.
Yeah.
That's a compassionate choice.
And the wildest thing is, and then you come forward, you make the right choice, you do the right thing. You come forward and you say, well, there might be, I mean, Brie especially, she was so funny when she came forward to talk about it. Brian got vaccinated after she was injured, which, because she was like, well, this was just me. And at first she was like, go out, do the right thing. And then she started realizing more and more people kept finding her and saying, okay, this is happening to me too, me too, me too. But it was so sweet. And she sets the tone for this film in a way that is it's just amazing, because she wants the best for everybody. And so do we. I mean, as us as filmmakers, to bring something to the world, we're not here to argue and fight. We're just here to show.
Yeah. And when I first talked to Brie, because we just all found each other, right? I didn't know that I would end up finding all of the people from that Milwaukee press conference. That was God. I mean, that just happened. But I had this instinct internally, and it was kind of like, I think it was just Yeshua telling me, you need Moses. You've got to find your Moses for this story. And, Brie doesn't like the comparison, I know. But I knew the moment that I talked to her, the very first time, I knew that I had found that person. I was instant. I was like, you're the one.
Well, she's a preschool teacher, which many people might not know. And if anything says it all, I'd say that says it all. I mean, she's a professional cat herder. And
yeah. The preschooler comes out the preschool teacher comes out all the time.
I mean, comes out with us. We got to ask her questions, or we're in conflict, or we're in a debate. Brie, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what's Matt thinking. Who's right?
Now, guys, is that hurtful or is that helpful?
I mean, she does. It's amazing.
Which is amazing, right? I mean,
she's there to put everybody into a space of that we're comfortable and can live our best selves. And she really is a beautiful human.
And we've become a family, you're this movement, this group, all these people, they forge a new family, and we love each other, and we talk to each other all the time, and we're all intimately connected now, and we will be forever.
And one of the things that I want to say about Joel real quick while we have him here is that Brie needed somebody to really stand by her. She needed a rock that she could lean on, and Joel came with a steadiness that we all see and that we all revere, that he gave a foundation for so much more to grow from, because there was a lot that was just floating around, and ideas and things. And even when Joel shows up in the film, it's extraordinary because he shows up with a constitution that is resolute. And it really helps to ground the momentum of where we drive to. And that it's the reality of how it really happened. One thing that I'm really proud of is that we're able to capture and really show exactly who these people are, who they are to each other, and who they are to the world. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much of a integral role Joel plays in all of this. We would have self-destructed a long time ago without Joel.
Well, it's very
He's
kind of all of you.
the gentle giant of all of this. I feel like. Go ahead,
Very
Joel. I'm
kind
sorry.
of you all. Very kind of you all to say, but I'm more than willing to help out Moses anytime.
She hates it when I say it, but it's true. So,
Well, and I just want to comment on what you said about how we've all become this family. And I know that, Texans for Vaccine Choice as an executive producer, we're so honored to be a part of getting the truth out on this story. And it's just been incredible to kind of get grafted into this little family here, because there is just such these ties are strong, and it's just been so beautiful to have us come together truly as a family, like you said. Tyler, before we hit record on this, you said that you had a question that you wanted to ask Bree. So now's your moment.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a thing that, and you'll see it in the film, and it's called the Virality Project. And it was something that was created out of Stanford University. And it's a really interesting insight on how the community of, how would you describe what they do, Matt? I mean, you've dug into them really deep.
What Virality's doing?
Yeah. I mean,
you're talking about a
true censorship complex they have created.
Yeah.
And so here's Bree, preschool teacher, totally anonymous to the world. Suddenly, there's information going between the Virality Project and the United States government, high levels of the United States government. And here's her name over and over and over again. And I just look at that, and I can't imagine being suddenly famous within the one place you don't want to be famous. Mm-hmm. And I've never really asked you that, Bree. Like, what was that experience?
Well, I didn't know until long after it was over. So that was scary. But I remember the first time I saw the report come through, somebody texted it to me and they were like, "Hey, have you seen this before?" And I said, "Nope." And then I looked through it, and they had tracked like my every move through like June and July of 2021. And I was meeting with Senator Mike Lee. I had met with Senator Johnson. We had done press conferences. We had been putting together petitions. I mean, it was a little disturbing, the detail that they had listed. So I took a deep breath and went and got a gluten-free cookie and just went dark for the rest of the day. But it really just, it's something that we all thought would not happen. We were all raised in school to believe that the government worked for us and that the government would work in our best interest and that we were in control of the government. But the reality is, and I learned this the hard way, unfortunately, is the government knows more about us than we know about the government. And that's a really dangerous situation for everybody in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's right. The thing that's so remarkable about this, right, is when you trace, where does the buck stop, essentially, mm-hmm. right? Where does all of this come from? It all lands on the doorstep of the United States federal government. It's not, in a lot of ways, it's not pharmaceutical companies. It's not like social media companies acted independently. They were being directed by the U.S. government, by the Biden administration. They were the ones who seeded money to Stanford to run this campaign to gather intelligence on U.S. citizens and then feed that back to the office of the president. And then the office of the president would tell social media companies who they wanted shut down. And that's what's so terrifying about this.
Including a 13-year-old girl.
Including Maddie, 13-year-old, 12-year-old girl.
In the Virality Project, they made big headlines to say 13-year-old girl making headway with her story, shut it down.
Yeah.
Over and over, they say.
Her health care.
Yeah, they said often true content, the true content, stop the true content. Yeah. You see it all over in everything that they wrote in there. Put a muzzle on anything that is true.
And that's what we find out, because when she did that press conference in June, right, which you find out in the film, the day after that press conference is when they lost their social media groups. That led to people dying. Literally. I mean, that's what's so egregious about this and what's going to be really difficult. And that's why we had to put this movie together in a way that would make it digestible to people, because this is hard stuff to break to the American people. I mean, I'm somebody, I never left the 90s. Like in the 90s, we all knew the government was up to no good. They were probably the ones that were behind all of the bad stuff that was happening in our country. It was probably the government, right? I mean, we knew they were hiding aliens and all kinds of other stuff. It was no secret. We made TV shows about it. So I just never left that. I've never been in a camp of I should trust my government. I love my country deeply, but I can't think of a moment of my life that I've trusted the government. So, and when stuff like this happens, it just vindicates. You're like, yeah, you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most disheartening pieces of putting all this together was the censorship. The stories are really hard. There are so many aspects to this that are unforgivable and unforgettable. But the true censorship that happened is astounding because Bree can attest to the fact that a lot of people in their pain and anguish took their lives because there was nobody there for them. They were silenced. They were on an island. So many people thought they were alone. They were the only one. They were the outlier when truly there were thousands and thousands of people trying to find each other. And there was community that was available, but then it was shut down. And I have no concept of how many souls were lost to that. And
can you imagine that, right? Like, can you imagine taking any support group? Like, imagine people that were like victims of rape, right? Imagine having a support group on Facebook for people who have been through something awful and traumatic that are just trying to be there for each other, to offer support and community and love. And then Facebook removes that group and shuts them down, shadow bans people so they don't realize that when they message people for help, that message isn't getting to them. Can you imagine if we did, that's the thing. It's like the things that happen to this community and to the people that have been affected by these products, right? We can't imagine doing that in any other situation, in any other sort of scenario. But somehow, because of the fear of COVID, we've allowed ourselves to turn a blind eye to this and to somehow accept it as being okay, right? Because we didn't want to create vaccine hesitancy. If the moment the American people understand the depth of corruption and harm done under that guise of vaccine hesitancy, it's going to be a new day in this country.
That's right. I mean, people that have been in this fight for vaccine safety have long contended that vaccines are the sacred cow of big pharma, and it's hard to push against that narrative. And I commend y'all. And I just want our listeners, we could talk literally for hours about this, and I just want our listeners to know that what we've talked about today barely scratches the surface of what's in this documentary. And even the documentary, like there's things that had to end up on the editing room floor. So they're going to hopefully release, subsequent little mini episodes as well with some of the additional content. But to wrap up, I want to kind of round robin with two questions. And that is, what message do you want viewers to walk away with after watching the film? And do you believe accountability is possible? And, what would justice look like? For each of you. So Joel, let's start with you. Oh, nope. Sorry. You want to start, Matthew?
No. I was like, those two. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Joel, you start.
Well, let me start, if I could, with your second question. So what is success? These people deserve competent medical care. 99+% of them are basically getting no medical care. So number one is competent medical care. And the second thing is fair compensation. Again, no doubt about it, Rebecca, I understand drugs, medical interventions have side effects. No one's saying that we're denying there's adverse events associated with drugs. However, for those that did get injured, there should be a safety net. There isn't. So they deserve fair and adequate compensation. Regarding your first question, what do I really want people to do? This movie, to me, the beauty of it, and Matthew knows my feeling on this, is my hope is this movie reaches outside of our echo chamber. The audience really is all the people out there in the world that are ready to hear this message. Are they ready to open their eyes and uncover their ears? So my hope is they hear it and they're moved enough to support us and support these people just to right a wrong, to do the right thing. That's my hope.
Very good. Bree?
Well, I mean, Joel kind of said it, but if you're actually recording the injuries correctly, then you're able to recognize them. And then these people are able to get care. And then you actually have accurate numbers to find things which we can't possibly find right now, like something as simple as what is the rate of injury with these products, right? These are things that are like big picture, very simple things that should be common knowledge for people. I can assure you that the current mantra of 1 in a million is far, far, far from what the actual number is. But there must be power in that number, because that is, I believe, the root of this whole scheme that has literally upended tens of thousands of lives, if not more, in the United States with injury. That one simple number is what is really going to propel this to investigations, compensation reform, liability protections, everything else. So that one number has a lot of power. So if we can get somebody to just put together a real rate of incidents that is general common knowledge, I think that's going to open up the door for the rest. It'll open up for care and everything else.
Very good. All right. Filmmakers, you want to chime in? What message do you want viewers to walk away with, and what would accountability and justice look like?
Yeah, so I want anybody who was potentially injured that's been told that it wasn't this, that maybe thought it was this, but has been gaslit over and over and over again, for them to give consideration that this really is what happened to you. And it's not your fault, and it's okay. And there needs to be research that includes you. And don't be gaslit to the point where you walk away with an illness that you can't get taken care of because nobody will allow you to own it. Yeah. That's what I want. And when you talk about justice, I hope this film is a calling card of the past and a warning for the future.
Well said. I like that.
And waxing poetic today, Tyler. I love it.
To me, that's what's important. That we, for sure. And there's this old saying of, you learn from your mistakes. There's another one that says, but it's better to learn from somebody else's mistakes. And maybe this can help people know that.
Yeah. It's good. So to answer, I'll go with what Joel did. To answer the second part first, is accountability possible? It's not only possible, it's mandatory. It has to happen. The problem is that, I think obviously a lot of people in this country have a fractured trust with the government, and they should. There's reason for that. If we're going to make integral decisions as a nation, then we need our government to answer us in that integrity. And you have to stand up and you have to say, we did these things wrong. We need to do better. Right. And that has to happen. And in order for there to be trust, in order for our society to function the way that we want it to, there needs to be a back and forth between that trust. And the government has a history of not telling us the truth. Obviously, there's financial vested interests in this whole story of why people wanted and why entities wanted this information covered up. But we can't allow that to happen. And we can't move forward as a society with that as a base of our relationship with the government. We can't allow that to happen. So in order for our society to continue and for us to have a future as Americans, we must demand accountability for this issue. And to Bree's point, she's right. When the government tells you that we did a great job, we saved all these people from COVID and billions of lives are saved, we know for a fact that these data points are not based on real data. None of it's true. They're not showing you the real data points. We're people that care about science. I love the scientific method. I have so much respect for science and for journalism. That's why I got involved in this story, because I could see where that wasn't being done from the very get-go. If we care about science, then we need to be unemotional about it, and we need to look at the data. And there's a large conversation that needs to come from that, and that needs to happen now. And I hope the movie illuminates that in a way for people to demand more answers, right? Because it has to happen. What do I want people to take from this film? I want discernment to be woken in people again. That was something I think that we sorely missed. And I think the people that questioned the vaccine and the mandates and the messaging that the government had, it was coming from a place of discernment. They're like, you know what? I've seen this before. I've seen this movie. I've seen this corruption. I watched this happen with other drug companies. I'm not going to go forward with this because I have the context of the past, to what you just said beautifully, which I loved. And that's true, right? That discernment allows us to be able to make informed decisions, because that's what we realize was so taken from us in this whole story. You were never given the informed consent that you deserved. And I hope that people can go forward with that and be armed with that. And also, we need a greater sense of community. There's so many people were denied healthcare and have a nightmare problem today, or they're lost in this hamster wheel of trying to figure out what's going on with me medically, right? People were denied access to medical care because of political ideologies. There were people, if you just walked in and said, hey, I'm vaccinated, I got vaccinated and something happened to me 12 hours later. Well, if you were talking to the wrong group of people, right, they wouldn't give you medical care because they thought that you were not on their ideological side of some political divide.
That's right.
And that's awful, right? I mean, how can we let politics get us to that point as a country that it's so divisive that people can't get access to medical care because of that? And I hope that that's something that we take a long look at as a culture and fix that, because nobody deserves that. This is just a movie about people who needed healthcare, that deserve healthcare, right? And I also hope that to all kinds of people that are lost in that medical hamster wheel right now, I think a lot of those folks are dealing with injuries and they're dealing with serious adverse effects from these products, and they don't know it. And that's something that, is a whole other conversation for another time. But so often with these illnesses, if you don't approach this from the right perspective, right, if you don't know what you're treating is potentially vaccine induced, well, that changes your treatment protocol. So there's all kinds of people that are lost in this medical system right now that don't have the right information because their doctors aren't looking at this, because the FDA and the CDC and everybody would not tell doctors this was happening, even though they knew it was. So, I mean, I've probably got 1,000 more answers to that.
But to that point, what Bree said the other day was, and we have integrated in this film, without the research, we don't exist.
Yeah.
And the research is really what this all hinges on.
Yeah.
Because without the research, it can't be seen. And if it can't be seen, you can't be seen.
Okay, well, with that, I think we should wrap up. And I had so many more questions, but I think this is a good point to say, like, you just need to come see the movie. So let's talk about it. We are hosting, Texans for Vaccine Choice is hosting the world premiere of Follow the Silence on May 15th in Austin. You can go to TexansForVaccineChoice.com. There's a blue banner at the top on how to get tickets to join us at the live premiere. Tickets are going fast, so get them ASAP. The movie will be released publicly online, free of charge for the entire globe to watch that night as well. TFVC and Mickey Willis were hosting watch parties all across. Texans for Vaccine Choice is hosting the Texas watch parties, and then there's watch parties that are happening across the globe as well. And so please watch it and then share it. Share, because these stories need to get out. The truth is worth fighting for. It's worth sharing. And like I said, it's just been such an honor to lock arms with all of you and so many others to get this movie over the finish line. It's just been a joy and a blessing for Texans for Vaccine Choice, my entire team. And we're looking forward to May 15th. And it will be a star-studded event. And I'm excited about getting this movie, like Joel said, to that kind of open-minded middle that just is ready to be awakened even more. So thank you all.
And thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for all your support, TFVC, Rebecca.
We wouldn't be here without you. Yeah, this movie would not be available to the public, and it wouldn't have been able to be complete without TFVC stepping in to help us get this over the finish line. So there's no words to say thank you, because thank you would just fall short. So we love you, and we are so grateful for your partnership.
Well, the love is mutual, and I just I know we this is the drum we've beat the entire episode here, but just we like humanity. Your love for humanity and your love for the truth is just so beautifully, or like just on display in this movie. And I'm speaking to all of you here. It's not just another vaccine documentary. Y'all are not, these, ragtag band of anti-vaxxers. I mean, Joel, Brianne, y'all signed up for this, and now you're being accused of being every horrible name in the book, right? And but to Matthew's point, we need to be able to have honest conversations about this. So thank you for your courage. Y'all are the true heroes here. And let's just go keep slaying dragons, because that's what we're called to do, guys. So thank you. And watch the movie, everyone.
Like St. George.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.